And I've been so positive about RWBY since Volume 9 came out. Episode 4 of Volume 9 of RWBY has a scene that kind of lit the fandom on fire when it comes to talking about the character arcs of the main girls. It starts when the girls get drugged, I guess, and they have to confront their inner demons. I'd say they're confronting their past selves, but the things that come out of the smoke don't come out of past RWBY. Oh, I know, since the things they see only come out after they get hit with the smoke from the caterpillar's hookah, I think that's what it's called. After they get hit with that smoke, let's say that they have to confront what comes out of them after they inhale the Zaza demon pack. Yes, that is a reference. And you know what? I have to be honest. This scene didn't really work for me. But of course, that leads me to ask, why? I mean, I know why Blake's scene didn't work immediately. It's because almost everything that has to do with the faunus in this show is basically generally agreed to have been handled horribly. To figure this out, I went all the way back to Volume 2, specifically Episode 10, Mountain Glen, the original spelling out of our character's character arc scene. The campfire scene highlights a divide between Weiss, Blake and Yang, and RWBY, as the former have to question why they chose to become Huntresses in the first place. Weiss had been soft retconned into acknowledging her family's less than perfect history and that her father is ruining their business and name. This is opposed to Volume 1 when she was their most ardent defender. I would love nothing more than to say that this is because of development, but the development is just her being racist and defending her family's company in Volume 1, telling Blake she's okay with her being an ex-terrorist at the finale, and now we're here. I'm not entirely sure how she thinks being a huntress would help her with redeeming a massive global corporation over training to take over from her father in Atlas, but that's just me. Going on through the rest of the volumes is just more of Weiss learning not to be a privileged asshole until she gets disinherited, at which point she opts to run away to join her team. Blake's dilemma was about her desire to do the right thing, but that raises the question of what exactly is the right thing to do. After being disillusioned with the White Fang, what does she do? She chose to become a huntress because they are usually heroes, and she wants to help people without succumbing to her flaw of running away from the problem. And yet she does run away again, to Menagerie, where she eventually decides that she and her family have to take the White Fang back from Adam, mostly by campaigning and trying to convince the faunus that live there that it's in their best interest to travel en masse to Mistral and protect Haven. Yang is more complicated. She was a go with the flow kind of girl who wanted to be a huntress for the adventure. It's simple, but a bit complex from certain angles. Being a huntress isn't really about out saving people for her, it just lines up with her desire to be adventurous, and not an innate desire to do good. And that's further compounded by this. Yeah, getting crippled was a massive part of her development, as suddenly the adventure got a lot more serious. But she does eventually get the courage to pick herself back up and try again, now more focused on protecting her sister. RWBY, on the other hand, was much more secure in her desire to help people, wanting to be like the idealized heroes in the story she read. All four of these girls went into the Beacon with ideas of what being a huntress meant to them: redemption, direction, adventure, and heroics. And then 6.5 volumes happened and we get to this scene. So let's go over all the girls again and see what this facing your inner demon scene that's meant to show how far they've come stacks up to history.
What is all this gibberish?
It's gonna be a long night.
Let's start with Weiss. Weiss is in a Zaza demon, tells her that the Schnee name is now basically nothing and she's a nobody, and asks if that's what she wants, because now she's free. Weiss basically responds by declaring that her grandfather was a hero, her dad was a villain, she has nothing and she won't let any of that define her. Okay, so here's my issue with this. Better looking Weiss is speaking bullshit. Weiss has never wanted to be a nobody, and on top of that, Weiss just easily rebuffs that with the fact that though there is no Schnee name or Atlas or anything for Weiss to fall back on, she's still more than that. Weiss's declaration that she's a huntress isn't showcasing her progress, it's just ignoring something really stupid that the Zaza demon said that she's never wanted. She was more into redeeming her family name than completely abandoning it. And you see, I should like this, because the fact that Weiss is able to bounce back from losing the Schnee name completely should be great development, but it draws my attention to how bungled her arc was in volumes 7 and 8. While it's great that Weiss is able to look at her situation and adapt to it, I'm upset that she never really did anything to accomplish her first goal in the first place, redeeming her family name. When she gets back to Atlas, she basically takes a backseat to all the side plots that don't matter. If she's going to boldly declare that she doesn't mind being the heir to nothing, I want her to have actively taken part in that. Sure, Weiss is the one who revealed her dad's crimes, but that was with evidence Willow gave to her. She barely did anything for it. Hell, if you want to talk about redeeming the Schnee name, Whitley almost did that himself when he decided to use the SDC ships to save all of Mantle, something Weiss neither thought of nor was capable of doing on her own. Freaking Nora was more outspoken about helping Mantle than Weiss. Weiss just kind of became a side character in her own kingdom. At the very least, she's the one who caught and revealed her father, but that was gift wrapped for her. She never gets close to turning her family name around as a whole, and instead kind of passively watches as it gets destroyed by Ruby's mediocre plan. What happened to feeling the need to make things right? Is this show trying to tell me that this is what early Weiss wanted? To be a nobody? Because I don't believe it. You know what the Shadow should be doing? It should be roasting her about how the Schnee company died under her father's control as part of a political scandal that killed several people, and the only one who came close to using it for anything good was Whitley, all while all she could do was fail to fight a monster. Instead of asking if she wants to be nobody, it should be asking if she wants to go back and actually try to take control of the company this time. Watching her rebuff that would have been much more meaningful. Weiss was sidelined in the stretch of the show that she should have had the most focus in, and it negatively affects this scene. And then there's Blake. Oh, Blake. A character so deeply tied to Ruby's poorly written racism subplot where the people fighting for equal rights were terrorists, and the solution is obviously the writer's interpretation of peaceful protesting. A lot of people have gone into what's wrong with this subplot, but it's quite amusing to see what it's done to this scene in particular. Blake's Zaza demon tells her she shouldn't struggle with responsibility of being a bridge between humans and foreigners, and all I can think is she doesn't. She very much doesn't struggle with that because she left the White Fang with her parents so she could travel with her friends. She's clearly already chosen not to be the one to do that. Also, the dialogue makes it sound like Blake's the fucking avatar or something who has to act as a bridge between foreigners and humans.
You could just be human. Or just a cat, if you wanted.
What? Look, the last time Blake actively gave a shit about the plight of the foreigners that wasn't just people being racist directly to her was Volume 5. And even then, she was more focused on stopping the violent White Fang. After Adam was beaten, she left dealing with the actual plight of the foreigners beyond telling them not to be terrorists to all the side characters. I'm not counting her crazy ex-partner chasing her down in Volume 6 because he didn't give a shit about it either. But that's not all. The clone begins by talking about just being human instead of being a foreigners. And honestly, that would have worked better as a challenge back in Beacon because that's when she was at a crossroads of pretending to be human, mostly for self-preservation. And she only took the bow off because she was going to Menagerie and never put it back on to go to the apparent most racist places on Remnant. This feels less like confronting doubts and more like trying to create a character arc for a flaw that's already been swept under the rug. There was no arc that this is referring to, just that she never put the bow back on. And Blake's rebuttal of not wanting to betray her friends and family and culture feels so hollow. What culture? Like, have we really seen foreigners' culture beyond the fact they live on a tropical island that they've only apparently had control over for like 80 years? That culture? But you know, these would probably have been great lines to hear her say in Volume 4 when she fully decides to stop wearing the bow. This feels like an explanation for an almost character arc that should have been in Volume 4. And so finally we move on to Yang. Her confrontation is about the things she's lost, especially her arm. And it's actually understandable. She lost an arm and the idea of going back to before that makes sense as a conflict. And a statement of how her losses have shaped her and that if she's missing anything she'll find it a great and only slightly hampered by her being so damn unlikable in Volumes 5 to 8. And it feels a bit off to have this conversation be about her missing arm, especially considering her prosthetic was stolen earlier this volume. Maybe this is just me, but I don't think there'd be any shame in saying she'd prefer her organic arm. But you know, I can accept that this is a conflict Yang would have to go through because you know, it's a whole arm that was cut off her body. Yeah, this would definitely be something that bothers her. But it kind of feels empty because this is the only scene after her decision to get back up in Volume 4 that's really addressing this idea. I think the problem is that this feels like low-hanging fruit as the easiest thing they could bring up. Instead of bringing up her mom, her problems with authority figures, going behind everyone's back to talk to Robin, Blake, her anger issues that she evidently still has.
In the book, Alex had to barter with Jinxie for her dagger.
Yeah, I think I'd rather hit him.
The decision to make this scene a reunion between old and new designs means that they seem to have decided to just go back for a conflict that was settled years ago, back when it's technically just at the edge of the Beacon era. Yang has had way more to deal with than just losing her arm, a loss she's already grown past and matured beyond. This isn't a challenge, it's an easy setup for her to score a win. And you know what? I think all of this, my issues with Weiss, Blake and Yang, is Ruby's fault. It's no secret that this is going to be the volume where Ruby gets a lot of focus and development. And to play that up, the show is portraying her teammates as more put together and complete than she is, even if it isn't true. Ruby has had many problems when it comes to the characterization of its heroes, and these scenes feel like they were pulled out of a hat to claim progress rather than referencing previous development, which has ranged from non-existent to lackluster. Realistically, all four of them should be having doubts regarding just their past actions in Atlas, instead of reaching all the way back to volume 4 and 3 and conflicts that have already been long settled. So what about Ruby herself? If I'm going to be perfectly honest, I actually like where this is going. Turns out saving the world is not as easy as she thought it would be, and she's having trouble figuring out where to go from here. It's actually good stuff that really connects to her troubles as a leader. And if you look back, this actually has some build up from her conversations with Ozpin to the last conversation she has with Roman, and even her poor decision making in Atlas. It's clear that something needs to change. The only thing that could make this better is if the show has the balls to just definitively point out her bad decisions. When her team inevitably helps her, it shouldn't be by brushing off her failures, but by making her actually be introspective about them. She needs to do more than be upset things went wrong, accept she's only human, and then continue on her merry way. She needs to examine why things went as wrong as they did, what she could have done better, and learn from those mistakes. Then she can continue on her merry way. This will all be meaningless if the lesson is simply, you're not perfect and that's okay. But those are just my thoughts on this scene. So tell me, what are yours? Did it strike you as off too? Or do you think I'm wrong? Feel free to tell me so in the comments down below, and while you're down there, don't forget to hit the like button and subscribe for more content. Thank you and good day.